Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I want to start by introducing myself. I am Marina Espayat, and I'm a student at INTEC. We welcome you today to our Mysteries and Hoaxes podcast, where we will be delving into one of the many interesting topics that we have found interesting enough to discuss. I am very pleased and proud to introduce our guests, who are also students at INTEC: Ana Tejeda, Rafaela Ibar, Alexa Feliz, and Wendy Trinidad. I would like to start by asking, have you ever heard about the Bog Bodies? Spooky name, right? Well, today we'll be finding out together. This mystery revolves around one of the freakiest discoveries in history. All over northern Europe, in areas called bogs, there have been found corpses that are centuries old, but strangely, they are well preserved, the only difference being that their skin has turned brown and they look withered, like mummies. Now, my theory about these bog bodies is that there's nothing behind the mystery at all. Yeah, nothing at all. My idea is that the bodies had to have been discarded there as because it was convenient as mass graves. This makes sense to me because the bodies have been found all over northern Europe, and it is ridiculous to think that there may have been some dark Machiavellian reasons for their death. It is a natural phenomenon, and there's no way that they could have been murdered intentionally because of the place, since they could have known back in the ancient times that the bodies would be preserved throughout the years. Now, I would like to move on to our first speaker, Wendy Trinidad, to hear what her theory is.
Oh, thank you, Maria. My opinion about bog bodies is that they were offered to the gods of fertility and good fortune. I agree on certain points with my host's theory, and it could have been like that, and it has similarities with mine. However, the bog bodies have to have been offered to the gods of fertility and good fortune, because it is said that they were thrown into the swamp for similar reasons, and thus they might have been examples of human sacrifices to the gods. So they could have been one of the reasons why these bodies are so preserved.
Oh, that's a creepy theory. I'm not sure I buy it though. What is your point of view, Anna?
Well, I believe these bodies may have been tortured and murdered as prisoners of war. Their vicious wounds could have been nothing more than the result of that. But why do I think that? Well, the bodies were found in Europe, and there has been several empires that have prevailed to date, each one of them fighting to get the land through the years. This means that in the place and time where the bodies were buried, there might have been war, causing soldiers to be taken as prisoners, killing and torturing them, and next burying and hiding them.
That sounds totally possible, Anna. It could have happened that way, I think. Now, moving on to our next speaker, Alexa, what do you think?
Okay, well, I have a different theory from Wendy and Anna because there's a possibility that the bug buddies were geographical outsiders. Due to new technology and new findings, I believe that rather than the bug buddies being criminals, slaves, or commoners, they were people singled out as important in their villages. Let me explain why. A mummy researcher called Heather Hill Firking has long argued that the buddies were geographical outsiders who may not have been cremated because they hadn't been assimilated into local customs. He also suggests that some of them may have perished due to natural causes rather than ritual sacrifices.
Oh, wow, that's a very well-researched theory, Alexa. But now, let's move on to our next speaker, Rafael, to hear what his theory is.
I think that bog bodies could have been sacrifices to any god. A relatively contemporary account supporting this theory belonged to the Roman historian Tacitus, who wrote that the northern tribes they interact with practice human sacrifice, and they may have been criminals and deserters. In these sacrifices, they preserve all the organs, perceptible facial features, fingerprints, hair, and nails. The most common way that they might have killed them in order to preserve everything was to cut their throats. This was one of the most common signs found in bog bodies.
All right, that sounds like you and Wendy arrived to similar conclusions, and I think it gives the theory extra weight. But these peoples and their times are long gone, and there's no way to really know what happened for sure. So the listeners have to make up their own minds. Now, bog bodies. Mummies found not in ancient Egypt, but in northern Europe. The perfectly preserved bodies found in eerie tranquility. And we wonder, where did they come from? I would like to thank the guests who so kindly participated in the making of this podcast. For all our listeners out there, if you want to show your support, you can always visit our Patreon if you want to discuss more content like this, where we discuss more spooky mysteries. And I would like to thank our listeners as well for letting us borrow a little bit of their time to listen to this.
Thank you.